friend. Welcome to the Mamahood After Trauma podcast. I'm your host, Emily Cleghorn. This podcast is for mamas navigating childhood trauma while also walking through mamahood. Together, we will empower each other to connect with who we were created to be versus who we were told to be in our trauma. I'm so excited that you've decided to take some time out of your day to join me and tune in. I hope you find this podcast uplifting and empowering. Let's get to it. So excited to have Michelle with me. She is a coach, a teacher, a mama. Welcome, Michelle.
So excited to be here. Thanks for having me on, Emily.
Oh, no problem at all. I'm so excited to have you. Michelle, let's just get started first by having you share a little bit about your story and what brought you to where you are.
Well, my story goes back, I think it was September 1st of 2020 when I just woke up and I was just like, we decided that was the year we were going to homeschool because of COVID and everything going on. But I was also just felt like I was more in a fog and not sure what I wanted to do with myself. And just that listless feeling of like, I've been doing everything else for everyone else, but what do I actually want? And I just struggled to answer that question. So I started a program called the 75 Hard, which is one of those programs where you have to do 2 exercises, you eat right, trying to remember everything, 10 pages a day. So then it was just one of these, but it was like, once you start that mindset shift, then things will start to change and you start to figure out things that you want to do. And so as I started to take on this program, I did end up doing the full year, but I think it was day 25 of phase 3, which was 5 days away from finishing the entire year, doing all these things, including talking to a stranger, taking 5-minute cold showers, just all the things you're supposed to do this program to help change your mindset. And I woke up at 2:00 in the morning and realized I had not taken my picture that day. I was like, oh my gosh, what does this mean? And that was when I finally came to the realization that you always hear the statement, it is about the journey. And that was my wake up call to that moment. I was so worried about this deadline and the finishing of something that it's really about enjoying each of your days. And then in all of this mindset shifting and the changing that I was making me realize that I couldn't be the only mama feeling like this, that there are other moms out there not knowing what their purpose is, not knowing what they want to do with themselves. We've been so busy giving everything to our kids, when our kids to be these happy, healthy adults. But it's hard for them to do that without seeing the role model of it. And so for me, it was like, what makes it easier for us to do this? And it's all about the connection. And it's about bringing us together and realizing when we do motherhood together, that it becomes funner and easier. And we can lift each other up and get ideas from each other, and no judgment, none of that like comparison idea, because it's more just, I have this problem, I have this question, I have this struggle, how do I get through it? And then that's what Connecting Mamas is all about for me, is bringing all the moms together so we can do motherhood together, because then it's so much more fun.
Yeah. I have discovered over the last 5 years or so that when I get so immersed in being mama, and I give until my cup is depleted, beyond depleted, it's negative. And I think a lot of mamas can resonate with that. You give so much and you're so worried about providing everything that your kids need. And especially in the early years, they're so heavily reliant on us for their survival.
Yes.
I default to a bit self-abandonment, self-neglect, and my connection with myself goes out the window. And when I am not connected with myself, it's really, really flippin' hard for me to connect to my husband or to my kids.
Well, yeah, I agree with you, because then that's when you're like, when you realize you're yelling so much and you're so like on edge, it's because your cup's not filled and you're not taking care of yourself. Because again, situations aren't going to change. Your kids are going to throw tantrums or they're going to do those things. The one thing that you can control and one thing you can change is how you respond or react to it. And the only way you're going to be able to respond is if you are taking care of yourself and filling your own cup first. And like you said, connecting with yourself, because once you lose that, that's when the yelling, when the aggravations, when you're irritated just so much quicker, you don't have time or the thought process of how to respond to situations. Because your kids are still going to go through their mood swings. I mean, they're growing. They're going to get hungry when they don't have a chance to give them food, and they're going to get hangry, and like those feelings are going to come out. But you, as the mom, how do you respond to that? And that the only way to do that is when you're filling your cup, as you were explaining.
Yeah. So, what are some tips or tricks or techniques that you have found particularly helpful with creating connection and sustaining connection?
Well, I think connection, as I keep telling my kids, comes down to intent, because it's your intent behind what you are doing. And so, for instance, for moms, we do have a busy day in front of us. We have a lot of things going on. But how do you intend to start your day? And I don't mean that you need to have an hour morning routine, because that also is the precursor to failure, is when we say we have to do all these things. But what you can do every single morning before you face your phone, before you face anyone, is take a moment to do something that does fill your cup. Whether it's taking 2 deep breaths before the baby's crying, you might have that baby right there, but you can take 2 deep breaths, which takes 10 seconds to compose yourself before going over to that baby. If you enjoy writing, you can do that. And I even had one friend say, well, her kids end up sleeping next to her, so she can't do that in the morning. Like, that's not true. Pretend you're still asleep, and you can still, in your mind, set that intention and take some deep breaths, even with the kid laying next to you. It's your choice of how you intend to start your day. And so that's the first thing that I just suggest for all moms, is to figure out what is that one thing in the morning that even takes a minute or two just to set intention for your own day, before the phone, before responding to kids, before responding to a spouse, before any of that, you put intention to your day. And so I just say start with one thing. You might need to explore that. It might be writing. It might be just having a cup of coffee by yourself, if you can manage that. But if you can't, again, it's finding those things that you can do and not saying I can't do it. Maybe it's just getting up and doing some stretching or breathing exercises, or I've been doing Qigong with my son, which is a form of Tai Chi is a form of Qigong, if more people have heard of Tai Chi. But it's just exploring and finding something that works for you. But it really comes down to intention. And intending to set your day up for success, rather than letting your day be start for you from your kids or whoever else is around you.
Yeah, allowing somebody else to set the mood for the day. Your mood for the day is where things get sticky. Because maybe they got up on the wrong side of the bed.
And again, right. And you let that then set your tone for the day. But if you set it first and someone else gets on the wrong side of the bed, then you're able to respond to it instead of react right away and be irritated. But you're like, okay, well, maybe I need to give them a break, or maybe it gives you more thought process into how you're going to deal with that, because you put the intention behind yourself for that day. And again, I know we keep using the excuse, well, we're too busy as moms, we can't do these things. And again, those are all excuses that we keep telling ourselves. And the more we tell ourselves, those just keep repeating in our heads. I can't do that. I can't do that. We'll start saying, I can do 5 minutes, or I can do 1 minute. I can take 2 deep breaths before. What is it that works for you? And that consistency of just doing 1 minute a day, saying, this is my intention for how I set my day, makes all the difference before you let the kids or someone else start your day for you. And the phone. Don't let the phone start the day for you either.
No.
Don't let the TV, don't let any of the outside stuff. You set an intention for your day for today. That is tip number one. Because then you're connecting with yourself, and then it allows you to be more responding to others instead of reactive, just with that
Yeah.
1 to 5 minutes. And that's
Yeah. And
and that consistency and showing up for yourself. That
yeah,
Go ahead.
moving out of reaction and into response is huge. It's massive.
And we keep thinking it takes so much. And it's, again, just keep that word intention in your mind, and then use curiosity to explore what intention works for you. Because that's what it really comes down to. And when we do that more often, and sometimes we might need to reset that throughout the day. Like when you start to feel that irritability or something, maybe it's that you start to notice what your body is doing, or when you're getting tired, or you need that snack, but then maybe you need that space to do whatever it is that fills your cup. And again, we're not talking hours, we're talking minutes of just
Yeah.
noticing and being proactive about it, though. And the proactive part comes in discovering what fills your soul. Is it journaling? Is it reading? Is it listening to a podcast? What is it that fills your soul? Is to start discovering those, and then those are the things you plan throughout your day. Is however they fit into your day. But again, it's not that you need hours and hours and hours of this. We're talking pockets, and especially that's what I love about what I'm doing. What made me want to do what I was doing is my kids were getting a little bit older, and I was having those pockets of 10 to 15 minutes where they're off playing by themselves, and if I go near them, they're like, "No, Mom, we don't need you." And it starts to happen, but then you're all of a sudden, what do I do with that pocket of time? Do I fill it with looking at Facebook? Do I fill it with watching TV? Do I fill it with playing? I was playing Candy Crush all the time, and then all of a sudden an hour passes and you look down and you're like, oh my gosh. And then you feel like worse and listless for doing it. So when you start using that curiosity and exploring things that actually do fill your soul, and having those handy, having a music, if you love dancing, turning on Alexa or your phone and just dancing for 5 minutes. Like, it's just finding those things that fills your cups, and then leaving yourself the breadcrumbs, so you're not like, oh, what do I do with this 15 minutes as soon as I have it? You have your list, you have your playlist ready, you have a podcast list ready, you have a book on the coffee table that you can just grab quickly when I have 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And those are the things that are going to fill your cup throughout the day, and give you a chance to do it. And it's just setting yourself up for that success rather than saying, oh, I don't have time to do any of this stuff. But you need to know what fills your cup.
Yeah. I really believe that by us telling ourselves that we don't have time, or whatever excuse that we're coming up with, it's a societally acceptable way of self-sabotaging yourself.
How many times have you heard, I'm too busy to do that? Like, that is just the key word for anything. Like, a mom will say, I'm too busy. I got so much going on. I have 3 kids to like take to all the activities and stuff. I have no time for that. Well, I'm sitting at swim practice. I can go walk around the block while she's at swim practice. Like, I can find ways to fit it in if I want to.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have to sit there on my phone while she's at swim practice. Like, there are ways, but again, that's where I think it comes down to is seeing what other moms who are making those decisions happening, and letting your brain process that someone else can do this, that it's working for them. And that's where bringing it and coming together and listening to these podcasts or listening to other moms who are doing these things is getting new ideas. And no, you don't have to do all the ideas, but you start listening to see which one does your gut speak to. Oh, when you hear, I can do that, those are the ones you try. So like, we just listed off 10 things right now, but if only one of them spoke to you, that's the one that you try. And you need to start listening to your gut. All of a sudden, when your brain says, oh, that's possible, that's where we start.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be complicated. You don't need to go spend all kinds of money on all kinds of equipment. Those are limiting beliefs that hold you back from stepping into the life that you really want and being the mom that you want to be.
Yes.
Like,
exactly. And I love how you said stepping into the mom you want to be.
Yeah. Like, one morning I woke up early and it was, past the point where I could easily go back to sleep. So I decided to get up and just stare at a wall. Just in my quiet house, which is never quiet, I just sat and stared at the wall and thought about life and reflected. And that time, by the time my husband and my kids got out of bed, I was ready to go. And sometimes that's all you need.
And I think that's, I love how you said that, because I think it comes down to, we keep hearing it's better when we slow down, but it's hard to actually envision that or actually think to do that, because we want to keep just being busy. We don't actually want to be stuck with our thoughts, because when we realize, then the negative thoughts start to circle. But as we start to do it more often, the negative starts shifting into possibilities. And I think that's the hard part, is it takes time for that shift to happen. And so we get afraid, because if we take 2 minutes, like all of a sudden, like, oh, I can't sit still. I got to pick up my phone. I got to do this. I got to do that. I can't stop moving. And we have those beginning thoughts that, no, I got to keep moving. But as we slowly start to do the process, then the thoughts start to shift. And like the time that you're sitting there slowing down, your brain starts seeing the possibilities of what can be. And then you start working towards those possibilities.
Yeah. So what piece of advice would you give to a mama who is just getting started, who's maybe struggling with connection, who's maybe yelling way more than she wants to? You flip of a switch and she's triggered. What piece of advice would you give her to get started on connecting and finding her calm?
Well, the first thing is, as you said, is noticing it. Because if you start to notice what's going on, and then, and again, it's noticing without judgment, because it's happening, and it's happening for whatever reason, whatever you're going through. And the first step is almost just acceptance of it, because you can't do that until to make a change unless you notice it. And so that first step is just like realizing you want something different. And when you want that something different, that's when you can start saying, well, what is it that feels like it's missing? Because it's obviously it's not with the cup or something that you're going, but like for me, for instance, it was, I was yelling a lot. And it would be the point where my son and I are so similar in personality. I'd literally throw my hands up in the air and go to my husband, you deal with me, you can deal with him. But as a mother, I didn't feel that I wanted to do. I wanted to be able to have a conversation with my son, and to be able to work through some of his stuff without having to call my husband in. And so for me, I had to acknowledge that and say, I want something different. And then what was it that did it? It was, again, taking those moments to figure out what it is that I need to do so that I could respond. And so it was that intention again with that morning, and figuring out what can I do to fill my cup first, so that when he does act out, because you know it's coming, what am I going to do differently? And it's not easy, and giving yourself grace, because it's situation by situation, and you're not going to be perfect. And yes, there are still days I will yell, but I'll even ask them, do I yell as much as, like, you hardly ever yell anymore, Mom? And getting that validation from them, because I want to make sure that it's not in my head. I want to make sure that's what's actually coming across to them. And so it's having that communication between them, which then brings a connection. It's you acknowledging that you want some sort of change, and then figuring out obviously something's not filled with your cup to be able to respond. So you need to fill in that piece of what's missing. And then having that open communication with them and saying, is this working for you? Or is it in my head, or what's going on? But that's what's going to bring the connection, is when you tell them, I want to make a change. Can you help me with it? And my kids were like, yeah, we don't want you yelling all the time. What can we do? And that's what brings the connection, is when you bring that open communication between you guys and say, what are some of the changes? And we've tried different things with like different charts or whatever it is to help with monitoring things, and not necessarily all those things work, but it's that willingness. And so even lately at the dinner table, we've been doing 4 things every day at the dinner table. what's one thing you struggle with, one thing, one for the day, and then what's one success you had, what's one piece of gratitude, and what's one funny thing that happened. And so I think it's just creating habits as a family that really help sustain that positive thought process, because when kids feel like they fail at things and failure isn't part of growth, and that also creates with the atmosphere as a family. And so
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to create those growth moments, and the more
Mm-hmm.
you just create that kind of conversation, that the more you all are going to grow. And because they're growing, there's going to be less conflict because they're working on it too. And there'll be times when my son will be like, "Okay, mommy, I think it's time for you to take a deep breath. Maybe you should go get some space." And like, what are you going to do? And you see that from them when it's, and vice versa. And I think that's what it really comes down to, is just creating that environment where you're all growing together and realizing we're human. We're still
Mm-hmm.
going to have our bad moments, but how do we help each other work through them?
Yeah. You can't change what you don't acknowledge.
Right.
It's so
And so as
true.
soon as you want to, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. How can people connect with you if they want to get in touch with you further?
So the best way right now is the website is connectingmamas.com. I'm also on Instagram at mama_connector, and also on YouTube as well. And I'll be launching a course soon with my whole goal is to bring moms together and to create this safe space for them to want to grow. And if you are ready to say that I want to change, then let's work together and do this together. And that information will be coming on the website pretty shortly. By the time this is out, I'm sure it'll actually be on there. So I really think it's just all about acknowledging what we want and being able to create that
Mm-hmm.
vision together. And I feel that it's hard when we can't see past I'm too busy, and we get stuck in not dreaming big. And the point
Mm-hmm.
of when we come together is that we can help each other dream big and help see that bridge,
Yeah.
that gap of how do we get from what we really want to do. And we can't really do it till we have that vision. And
Mm-hmm.
so honestly, if you're feeling stuck or something, start dreaming, start being curious about what is it, the type of person that I do want to be. Start painting that person, and then
Mm-hmm.
asking yourself, what habits does that person have? And
Mm-hmm.
those become your daily habits that you want to do. And if you want, and again, the easiest way I found to do it was through community and finding. The one
Yes.
thing I noticed was when I decided to go down the personal development route and stuff, people around you don't necessarily want to as well. And sometimes it's harder when you want to grow and the people necessarily around you don't want to go, that you end up going back into your turtle shell and saying, okay, well, maybe
Mm-hmm.
it's not right for me right now. So that's why, even if it's not connecting mamas, but I suggest finding a community where you feel safe, because it is vulnerable. It is hard to
Mm-hmm.
say, I do want to make a change. And some people are okay with where they're at, and that's fine. But when you
Mm-hmm.
decide that you want to, and you want that safe space, look for it. And don't just, vulnerability became such a big buzzword, but realize you don't have to be vulnerable with everybody.
No.
Pick the people that you want to be vulnerable with, that you feel safe with, and
Yeah.
looking for that safe community and structure. And that's what I recommend. Um,
N-
is
Not,
that acknowledgement of I want to grow, and how do I do it?
yeah, not everybody is going to be appreciative and value your vulnerability. And so,
And again, it is like a dance, because
yeah.
trying to get that to try to, like, a little bit of vulnerability and then seeing how it gets taken. And again, it's a little bit of a dance between that, and find that right space where you feel comfortable. And all of a sudden, and that's why friendship can be so hard at times too, as well, is because we want to just jump right in, we want to dive right in. But then, and I love how you're saying with the trauma though, but like our traumas with belonging and things with childhood and things also come into play when that happens. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
why I even wanted to create Connecting Mamas, because I want to create that safe space where we can take baby steps into this
Mm-hmm.
vulnerability and learn how to do it again. Because at some point, someone said no to us, or someone hurt us, or something happened with that sense of belonging. Because a lot of moms are saying, well, I feel so alone. I don't belong anywhere. Oh, all these other people have all these friends and I have no one. And so I want to create that space where you could come in and feel that welcoming and feel that space, and purposely did it virtually right now, because when you jump in person, it creates a whole new level. And
It's a
for
new
me, when I
dynamic.
did that, my whole body like traumatically responded to that. And I ended up having to remove myself from a group because of it. And so I want to create that bridge, that baby step for moms to start this. And eventually then they can create their own in-person groups or whatever. But virtual is just so great because you can always have it, whether people move or what, it's always a safe place to come back to, and to feel that calm, and to get those tools to be able to then do it outside. But then you always have that space to come back to collaborate and have those ideas flown with it. And so I really love and hate how COVID made virtual so like powerful, but it really did, because it gave us that place like, yeah, we've had trouble. We've had trauma with belonging and connecting. We live in these little houses and these little boxes, and we don't want to look at our neighbors, and we don't want to do these things. And so how do we go from that to, oh, I'm going to be best friends with this person? It's a dance. It takes vulnerability and it takes time. And so where do you do that? Not something for you to determine.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Mamahood After Trauma podcast. If you resonated with what you heard, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and share it with a friend who would also benefit, because we rise together. Until next time, Mama, keep shining.